Daniel Wright stood at the observation deck of the council station, watching ships from 17 different species drift past the viewport. Some were elegant and curved like the Solari vessels. Others were blocky and functional like the Corthan freighters. Among them, human ships moved with purpose, their sleek designs a testament to 50 years of cooperation and growth. He smiled, remembering his first day as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. Back then, humanity had been the newcomers, the curious primates from a backwater planet who had just discovered faster-than-light travel. Now, humans were everywhere. They served on every council world, worked in every industry, and had earned respect through their actions rather than their words. Katie Morrison walked up beside him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Daniel and joined him at the window. Katie had been his assistant for 20 years, and in that time, she had become one of the most skilled diplomats in council space. Alien species often requested her specifically to mediate their disputes. Another successful trade agreement, Katie said, taking a sip from her cup. The Vrix weren't happy about it, but the other species voted in favor. Daniel nodded. The Vrix were always complicated. They were one of the founding members of the Council, a species that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years before humanity even invented the wheel. They had pride, and lately that pride seemed wounded by how quickly humans had integrated into galactic society. The Vrix will come around, Daniel said, though he wasn't entirely sure he believed it. They just need time to adjust. Across the station, Captain Lisa Shang was briefing her flight crews. She commanded the defense fleet for Sector 7, a region of space that included 12 inhabited worlds and hundreds of mining operations. Her ships patrolled the border, keeping pirates and raiders away from peaceful colonies. Lisa had joined the council. Military 15 years ago as a junior pilot. Now she commanded 300 vessels and over 10,000 personnel from 8 different species. Her crews loved her because she was fair, competent, and never asked them to do anything she wouldn't do herself. "Listen up," Lisa said to the assembled officers in the briefing room. "We've got reports of raider activity near the Belton colony. I want 3 squadrons ready to deploy within the hour. We go in fast, we hit hard, and we bring everyone home safe." A Corthan officer raised his hand. His name was Grevok, and he had served under Lisa for 5 years. "Captain, the Belton colony is outside our assigned patrol zone. Shouldn't the Vrix handle this?" Lisa shook her head. "The Vrix fleet is 3 days away. Those colonists need help now. We're the closest response team, so we respond." "That's what we do." The officers nodded and dispersed to their stations. This was why humans had earned their reputation. They didn't wait for perfect conditions or proper authorization. When someone needed help, humans showed up. Dr. Ben Carson was having a similar day in his medical research facility on Council Prime, the central world of galactic government. Ben specialized in xenobiology, the study of alien life forms and their unique medical needs. Over the past decade, he had developed treatments for 17 different diseases that affected various council species. His current project was particularly challenging. The Telrani, a species of amphibious beings, were suffering from a genetic disorder that had appeared suddenly 3 generations ago. Their own doctors couldn't figure out the cause, but Ben had a theory. He believed it was related to how their DNA responded to cosmic radiation during space travel. "If I'm right," Ben explained to his assistant, "a young Telrani named Korvaz, we can create a gene therapy that will fix the problem at its source. Your people won't have to suffer anymore." Korvaz looked at the data on the screen, his large eyes reflecting the light. "Dr. Carson, my people have been trying to solve this for 30 years. How did you figure it out in 6 months?" Ben shrugged. "A fresh perspective, maybe. Sometimes when you're too close to a problem, you can't see the obvious answer. Plus, humans are pretty good at finding creative solutions. It's kind of our thing." In the engineering bays of the Tyro shipyard, Maria Santos was revolutionizing faster-than-light travel. She and her team had discovered a way to modify the standard council drive systems to be 30% more efficient. This meant ships could travel farther, faster, and use less fuel in the process. The implications were enormous. Trade routes that had been barely profitable would now thrive. Exploration missions could reach deeper into uncharted space. Emergency response teams could arrive at crisis situations much quicker than before. Maria stood in front of the Council's engineering committee, presenting her findings. The committee consisted of the top engineers from each member species. They watched her presentation with a mixture of admiration and envy. "As you can see from the test results," Maria said, pointing to the holographic display, "the modified drives perform better in every measurable category. We're ready to begin retrofitting existing vessels and implementing this design in new construction." One of the VRIX committee members, an engineer named Vexcor, interrupted her. "These modifications rely heavily on human-developed components. This makes the entire Council fleet dependent on human supply chains." Maria kept her smile professional. "The components can be manufactured by any species with industrial-level fabrication. We're providing the designs free of charge to all Council members. There's no dependency, just cooperation." Back on Earth, Jake Palmer was compiling reports for the Human Colonial Administration. Jake worked as a liaison between Earth's government and the human colonies scattered across Council space. There were now 47 human colonies, ranging from small research outposts to thriving cities with millions of inhabitants. His current report showed impressive growth. Human colonies were prospering, human businesses were expanding, and human citizens were integrating well with alien neighbors. Crime rates were low, economic indicators were strong, and satisfaction surveys showed that 92% of human colonists were happy with their decision to settle in Council space. Jake sent the report to President Elizabeth Grant on Earth. She would review it and present the highlights to the human parliament. It was important for people back home to know that their citizens abroad were safe and successful. That evening, Daniel Wright attended a Council reception. These gatherings happened once a month, giving ambassadors and dignitaries a chance to socialize in a relaxed setting. Daniel moved through the crowd, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries with representatives from dozens of worlds. He found himself in conversation with Ambassador Kelver, a Solari who served as the current Council chairman. Kelver was ancient by human standards, over 300 years old, and he had guided the Council through some of its most challenging periods. "Ambassador Wright," Kelver said warmly, "I wanted to personally thank you for humanity's contributions to the Border Security Initiative. Captain Chang's performance has been exemplary." "Lisa is one of our best," Daniel agreed, "but she couldn't do it without the support of the Council and her multi-species crews. This is what cooperation looks like." Kelver's expression shifted slightly, becoming more serious. "There are some members of the Council who feel that humanity is advancing too quickly. They worry about the balance of power." Daniel felt a small knot form in his stomach. "We're not trying to take over, Chairman. We're just trying to contribute and be good members of the community." "I know," Kelver said, "but perception matters in politics. The VRIX in particular have expressed concerns. They believe humans are being given preferential treatment." "We earn our positions through merit," Daniel said, keeping his voice calm. "Every human in a leadership role got there because they were the best candidate. We don't ask for special treatment. We just ask for equal opportunity." Kelver nodded slowly. "Of course. I'm simply making you aware of the political currents. It's always wise to understand what others are thinking, even if their concerns are unfounded." After the reception ended, Daniel met with Katie Morrison at a quiet cafe near the diplomatic quarter. He told her about his conversation with Kelver. Katie frowned, stirring her coffee absently. "The VRIX have been pushing back on every human initiative lately. They opposed your trade agreement, they questioned Ben's medical research, and they tried to block Maria's engineering upgrades." "They're scared," Daniel said. "When humanity joined the Council 50 years ago, the VRIX were the dominant military and technological power. Now they see humans matching or exceeding them in many areas. It bruises their pride." "Pride is dangerous," Katie said quietly, "especially when it's mixed with fear." Daniel looked out the window at the glittering cityscape of Council Prime. Billions of beings from countless Worlds lived and worked together here. It was the greatest experiment in cooperation that the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity had fought hard to earn a place at this table, and he wasn't going to let ancient jealousies tear that down. "We'll navigate this," he said with more confidence than he felt. "We've faced challenges before. We'll face this one too." That night, Lisa Chang's fleet engaged the raiders near Belton Colony. The battle was brief but intense. Lisa's ships moved with practiced precision. The first restriction came quietly, buried in a routine military reorganization proposal. Katie Morrison caught it while reviewing the week's council legislation. She read the paragraph 3 times, hoping she had misunderstood. She hadn't. She walked quickly to Daniel Wright's office, the document displayed on her datapad. Daniel was reviewing trade reports when she entered. One look at her face told him something was wrong. "They're removing humans from military command positions," Katie said without preamble. "Effective immediately." Daniel took the pad and read the proposal. The language was careful and diplomatic. It spoke of balancing representation and ensuring equitable distribution of leadership roles. But the effect was clear. Humans would be barred from commanding council military vessels or serving as senior officers in the defense forces. "This targets Lisa Chang," Daniel said quietly. "She's the most successful fleet commander in the border sectors." "It targets all of them," Katie replied. "Every human who earned their rank through skill and dedication. This isn't about balance. This is about pushing us down." Daniel scheduled an emergency meeting with Chairman Kelver. He arrived at the chairman's office an hour later, prepared to argue against the proposal. Kelver greeted him with a tired smile. "I know why you're here, Ambassador Wright," Kelver said before Daniel could speak. "The military reorganization. It's discriminatory," Daniel said bluntly. "It removes qualified officers based solely on their species. That violates the core principles of the Council." Kelver sighed and gestured for Daniel to sit. "The Vrix have considerable influence in the Council, Ambassador. They've convinced several other species that humanity holds too many strategic positions. They argue that it creates a security risk." "A security risk?" Daniel's voice rose slightly. "Humans have bled for the Council. We've protected worlds that aren't even our own. How is that a risk?" "I agree with you," Kelver said. "But I don't have enough votes to stop this proposal. The best I can do is ensure the transition is handled respectfully." "Respectfully?" Daniel stood up. "You're stripping qualified officers of their commands. There's nothing respectful about it." The proposal passed the Council by a vote of 11 to 6. Within a week, orders went out to all human military personnel. Captain Lisa Chang received her notification while overseeing routine patrols in Sector 7. She read the message twice, her jaw tightening. After 15 years of service, after hundreds of successful missions, after earning the loyalty and respect of thousands of crew members, she was being demoted. Her command would be given to a Vrix officer named Thexkull. Lisa called her senior staff together and broke the news. The reaction was immediate and angry. Grevik, her Korthan second in command, slammed his fist on the table. "This is insane," Grevik said. "You're the best commander in the fleet." "Everyone knows it." "It doesn't matter what everyone knows," Lisa said, her voice carefully controlled. "Orders are orders. We'll transfer command smoothly and professionally. That's how we maintain discipline." The transition took 2 weeks. Thexkull arrived with an attitude of superiority and immediately began changing Lisa's carefully developed protocols. He dismissed her tactical recommendations and installed Vrix officers in key positions. Pushing out the experienced multi-species crews that Lisa had built, Lisa watched her life's work dismantled in days. When the transfer was complete, she returned to Earth, with a bitter taste in her mouth and a growing anger in her heart. The military restrictions were just the beginning. A month later, new colonial expansion regulations appeared. Human colonies were frozen at their current borders while other species received approval for new settlements. The stated reason was environmental impact assessment, but everyone understood the real purpose. Jake Palmer saw the effects immediately in his colonial reports. Human settlements that had planned growth for years suddenly found their applications denied. Families who had saved money to homestead on frontier worlds were told there was no space available. While other species colonies expanded without restriction, he brought the issue to President Elizabeth Grunt during their monthly briefing. The president listened with a deepening frown. "They're boxing us in," Elizabeth said. "Making sure we can't grow while everyone else expands." "It's deliberate," Jake confirmed. "The Vrix are behind most of these restrictions, but other species are supporting them. They've convinced the council that humans are too aggressive, too expansionist." "We're the least aggressive species in the council," Elizabeth said with frustration. "We've never started a conflict. We've never taken territory by force. Everything we have, we earned or bought fairly. Truth doesn't matter if the people with power don't want to hear it." Jake replied. In his medical research facility, Dr. Ben Carson faced his own challenges. A council oversight committee arrived unannounced to review his work on the Taurani genetic disorder. The committee was led by a Vrix scientist named Vexcor, who made no effort to hide his disdain for human researchers. "Your research methodology is questionable," Vexcor said, reviewing Ben's carefully documented experiments. "These results could not have been achieved in such a short time frame." "The methodology is sound," Ben said, struggling to keep his temper. "Everything is documented. You can replicate the experiments yourself if you doubt the results." "That won't be necessary," Vexcor said coldly. "We're confiscating this research for additional review. All your data, samples, and equipment will be transferred to a council facility." "This is my work," Ben protested. "Years of my life. This is council work performed in a council facility with council resources," Vexcor replied. "Therefore, it belongs to the council. You should be grateful we're not charging you with research misconduct." Ben watched helplessly as his life's work was packed into containers and hauled away. The Taurani assistant, Korvas, approached him after the committee left. There were tears in the young alien's eyes. "Dr. Carson, I'm so sorry," Korvas said. "This isn't right. You are helping my people." "I know," Ben said, feeling hollow. "But there's nothing I can do about it." 6 months later, the gene therapy for the Taurani disorder was announced at a major council scientific conference. The Vrix Research Institute claimed credit for the breakthrough. Ben's name was nowhere in the report. When he tried to protest, he was told he had signed agreements giving the council ownership of all his research. Technically, they were correct. Morally, they were thieves. Maria Santos faced similar treatment in the engineering division. Her drive modifications had been implemented across the council fleet with great success. Ships were faster and more efficient than ever before. But when it came time to recognize the achievement, Maria found herself sidelined. The council awarded the Engineering Excellence Prize to a Vrix engineer who had supposedly refined and perfected Maria's design. The changes were minimal, mostly cosmetic adjustments to the housing units. But the credit and the substantial prize money went to the Vrix engineer. Maria submitted a formal complaint. It was denied within hours. When she pushed harder, she was informed that her contract with the Council Engineering Division would not be renewed. After 8 years of groundbreaking work, she was being fired. Daniel Wright protested every restriction, every injustice, every stolen achievement. He filed formal complaints, gave impassioned speeches to the council, and met with every ambassador who would listen. Katie Morrison stood beside him, documenting everything with meticulous detail, but the restrictions kept coming. Human businesses found themselves facing sudden regulatory reviews. Human trade ships were subjected to lengthy inspections at council checkpoints. Human students were denied admission to prestigious council universities despite having better qualifications than accepted applicants from other species. The message was clear. Humans were being pushed back into second-class citizenship. Everything they had built over 50 years was being systematically dismantled. During one particularly frustrating council session, Daniel finally confronted Dexkel directly. The Vrix ambassador had just spoken in favor of new restrictions on human commercial licensing. "Why are you doing this?" Daniel demanded. "What did we do to deserve this treatment?" The Skull looked at him with cold, reptilian eyes. You're advancing too quickly, Ambassador Wright. You've been in council space for barely 50 years, yet you act as if you belong in leadership positions. You need to learn your place. Our place? Daniel's voice echoed through the chamber. We've earned our positions through hard work and merit. We've saved lives, protected worlds, and contributed more to this council than some species who have been members for centuries. If that threatens you, then maybe you should work harder instead of trying to tear us down. The council chamber erupted in arguments. Some ambassadors supported Daniel's words. Others shouted him down. Chairman Kelver called for order, but the damage was done. The divide was now open and obvious. That evening, Katie Morrison sat in her apartment, reviewing her notes from the past year. She had documented every restriction, every insult, every stolen achievement. The pattern was unmistakable. The council wasn't just limiting humanity's growth. They were trying to drive humans out entirely. She thought about resigning. She had given 20 years of her life to The civilian transport ship Wanderer was 3 days from port when the Vrix patrol vessel appeared on their sensors. Captain Alex Rodriguez wasn't worried at first. Routine inspections were common. Even if they had become more frequent and more aggressive toward human ships in recent months, Alex commanded a crew of 45, transporting 200 colonists to New Earth settlement in Sector 9. Most of the passengers were families. There were children aboard, playing in the recreational areas while their parents rested in their quarters or chatted in the dining hall. Vrix patrol ship is hailing us, reported his communications officer. A young woman named Emma Cole. Put them through, Alex said. The Vrix captain's face appeared on the screen. His expression was hostile from the start. Human vessel, you are ordered to stop your engines and prepare for immediate boarding and inspection. We were inspected 2 days ago at the Corlin station, Alex replied calmly. Our cargo manifest and passenger lists were approved. We're following our approved flight plan. I don't care about Corlin approvals, the Vrix captain snapped. Stop your engines now, or we will interpret your movement as hostile action. Alex felt cold dread settle in his stomach. This wasn't normal procedure. We're a civilian transport with families aboard. We're not a threat to anyone. Please confirm your authorization for this inspection with Council Traffic Control. You dare question my authority? The Vrix captain's voice rose. You're in Council space, human. That means you follow our orders. Alex looked at his first officer, a man named Greg Torres, who had 20 years of experience in civilian transport. Greg's face was pale. They both understood what was happening. This wasn't about inspection. This was about power and humiliation. We're complying, Alex said, trying to keep his voice steady. Cutting engines now? Please give us time to secure the passengers. You have 5 minutes. The Vrix captain said and cut the connection. Alex immediately activated the ship-wide communication system. All passengers, this is Captain Rodriguez. We're experiencing a routine inspection delay. Please remain calm and stay in your current locations. This will be over shortly. But it wouldn't be over shortly. Alex knew that. He had heard stories from other human captains about these inspections. Hours of harassment, equipment damaged, cargo confiscated, passengers intimidated. The Vrix seemed to enjoy making humans suffer these indignities. Captain, Emma said urgently, they're powering weapons. Alex's blood went cold. Confirm that. Are their weapons actually armed? Confirmed. Targeting scanners are locked on our position. This was wrong. This was completely outside any protocol. You didn't aim weapons at a civilian transport during a routine inspection. Alex's hands moved quickly across his console, activating the emergency beacon and opening a direct channel to Council Emergency Services. This is the civilian transport Wanderer. We're being threatened by a Vrix patrol vessel. They've armed weapons against an unarmed civilian ship. We have 200 passengers, including children, requesting immediate assistance. The response came back cold and bureaucratic. Wanderer, comply with local patrol instructions. If you have complaints about inspection procedures, file a formal protest after the inspection is complete. They have weapons aimed at us, Alex repeated desperately. This isn't an inspection. Something is wrong. Comply with patrol instructions, the voice repeated and the channel closed. Greg Torres gripped his console. Captain, what do we do? We wait, Alex said, though every instinct screamed at him to run. We're unarmed. We have families aboard. We wait and hope this is just intimidation. The 5 minutes passed. Then 10, then 15. The Vrick ship moved closer, its weapons still armed and locked. Alex tried hailing them multiple times. They didn't respond. In the passenger areas, parents were starting to sense something was wrong. The children, picking up on their parents' anxiety, became quiet and afraid. In the recreational area, a little girl named Sophie held her mother's hand and asked why they had stopped moving. Just a delay. Sweetheart, her mother said, but her voice shook. 20 minutes after the initial contact. The Vrick ship opened fire. The first shots tore through the Wanderer's engine section. Alex's console exploded in a shower of sparks. Emma screamed as the ship lurched violently. Emergency alarms shrieked through every corridor. Why are they shooting? Greg shouted over the noise. We're not fighting back. We're complying. Alex didn't have an answer. He was too busy trying to save his ship, but the Wanderer was a civilian transport not built for combat. It had minimal armor and no weapons. Against a military patrol ship, it had no chance. The second volley struck the passenger sections. The screaming started then. Parents trying to shield their children. Crew members trying to reach emergency stations. The ship's hull breaching in multiple locations. The sound of rushing air as compartments lost atmosphere. Alex broadcast one final message on the emergency channel. His voice was breaking. This is Captain Alex Rodriguez of the Wanderer. We're under attack. Civilian transport with families. We never resisted. We were complying. Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them we never fought back. The third volley hit the command deck. The explosion was instantaneous. Alex Rodriguez, Emma Cole, Greg Torres, and the entire bridge crew died without time to feel pain. In the passenger sections, the dying took longer. Parents held their children as the cold vacuum of space rushed in. Crew members sealed compartments, saving some while sacrificing themselves. The ship broke apart, scattering wreckage and bodies across thousands of kilometers of space. When rescue ships arrived 6 hours later, they found no survivors. 245 dead. 68 of them children under the age of 12. The Vrick's patrol ship was already gone. It had left immediately after the attack, destroying most of its own sensor logs. When questioned, the Vrick's captain claimed the human ship had attacked first. He said they had fired warning shots and the human ship had exploded due to unstable engines. The council investigation took 3 weeks. They concluded that while the incident was regrettable, there was insufficient evidence to prosecute the Vrick's captain. The report suggested that Captain Rodriguez had been operating an unsafe vessel and might have panicked, causing the incident through his own actions. When Daniel Wright read the report, he felt something break inside him. He had spent 30 years building relationships with the council. He had believed in cooperation and mutual respect. He had trusted that justice would prevail. He had been a fool. Daniel requested an emergency meeting with Chairman Kelver. The chairman looked uncomfortable when Daniel entered his office. He had seen the human ambassador angry before, but never like this. 245 people, Daniel said quietly. 68 children. And your report blames the victim. Ambassador Wright, I understand you're upset, Kelver began. Upset? Daniel's voice was still quiet, but it carried an edge that made Kelver flinch. Upset is when my coffee is cold. Upset is when traffic is slow. What I am right now doesn't have a word in your language. The investigation was thorough, Kelver said weakly. Daniel slapped a datapad on the desk. I have testimony from 17 human ships that were in the area. I have sensor logs from a Corthan freighter that recorded the entire incident. I have the Wanderer's emergency broadcast. There is no question about what happened. A Vrick's captain murdered 245 unarmed civilians, and your council is covering it up. Kelver looked at the datapad but didn't pick it up. The Vricks are a powerful faction in the Council. If we prosecute one of their captains, it could fracture the alliance. So you let them get away with murder to keep the peace? Daniel felt sick. What kind of justice is that? It's political reality, Tover said. I'm sorry, Ambassador. I truly am. But I cannot move forward with prosecution. Daniel stood. He felt very tired suddenly. Tired of fighting. Tired of hoping. Tired of believing that good faith and honest effort would be rewarded. Then we have nothing more to discuss, Daniel said. You've made your choice. Now humanity will make ours. The news of the Wanderer massacre spread through human colonies like wildfire. The Council's refusal to prosecute sparked outrage. Protests erupted on every human world. Human workers walked off their jobs. Human ships refused to answer Council distress calls. Katie Morrison submitted her resignation during a full Council session. She stood at the speaker's podium, looking at the assembled ambassadors who had been her colleagues for 2 decades. I came to this Council believing in something bigger than my own species, Katie said. I believed we could build something better together. I was wrong. You've shown me that justice only exists when it's convenient. That children's lives matter less than political alliances. That humans are expected to serve and sacrifice but never demand accountability. She paused, letting her words sink in. I resign my position. I will not represent Earth to an organization that has no honor. And I predict that soon, very soon, Earth will not want representation here at all. Because we're done accepting crumbs from your table while you spit in our faces. Katie walked out of the Council chamber. She never looked back. On Earth, President Elizabeth Grant called an emergency session of the Human Parliament. The chamber was packed with representatives from... Admiral Chris Wallace stood in the operations center on Earth, coordinating the largest evacuation in human history. Screens covered every wall, showing the positions of thousands of ships across Council space. Each ship represented hundreds or thousands of human lives that needed to come home. The Exodus Protocol had been designed years ago by military strategist Colonel Nathan Price. It was a contingency plan, created during the early years of human expansion when they weren't sure if joining the Council was safe. No one had expected to actually use it, but now it was their lifeline. Status report, Chris ordered. His second-in-command, a sharp woman named Linda Hayes, consulted her displays. We've made contact with all 47 colonies. 92% of civilian ships are ready for immediate departure. Military vessels are standing by. The hardest part will be coordinating departure times to avoid traffic jams at the transition points. We have 6 months, Chris said. Let's do this right. No one gets left behind. The first phase focused on the military. Lisa Chang, restored to her rank for the Exodus operation, commanded the fleet withdrawal from the border sectors. Her ships had been protecting Council worlds for years. Now they were coming home. Lisa stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching her tactical display. Her fleet consisted of 300 vessels crewed by over 10,000 personnel. Most of the crew were human, but there were also Korthan, Telrani, and members of other species who had served under her command. Grevik, her loyal second officer, approached her. Captain, we have 23 non-human crew members requesting permission to stay with the fleet. Lisa looked at him in surprise. They want to come to Earth. They want to stay with you, Grevik said. We've served together for years. These people are our family. They don't want to serve the Council anymore either. Lisa felt emotion tighten her throat. Tell them yes. Anyone who wants to come with us is welcome. But make sure they understand what they're choosing. They'll be leaving their homeworlds behind. They understand, Captain, Grevik said quietly. They're choosing loyalty over politics, just like you taught us. The fleet began its withdrawal in coordinated waves. Ships pulled back from patrol routes, leaving border stations unmanned. Lisa made sure every departure was logged and reported to Council Command. They weren't sneaking away. They were leaving openly and professionally on the border worlds. Local populations watched the human ships depart with growing concern. These were the ships that had protected them from pirates and raiders. These were the crews that had responded to emergencies. Without them, the border regions would be vulnerable. A Telrani governor sent a desperate message to council headquarters. The human fleet is withdrawing from Sector 7. We have no protection. The Vrix fleet is 3 days away. What are we supposed to do for those 3 days? The response was unsympathetic. Coordinate with Vrix Command for temporary coverage. The situation will stabilize. It didn't stabilize. Within a week of Lisa's fleet withdrawal, raiders attacked 2 border colonies. The Vrix fleet arrived too late to prevent significant casualties. The pattern would repeat across multiple sectors in the coming months. While the military withdrew, civilian operations shut down with equal efficiency. Maria Santos coordinated the departure of human engineers from shipyards, space stations, and industrial facilities across council space. The challenge was complex. Human engineers had integrated their technology deeply into council infrastructure. You couldn't just flip a switch and leave. Systems needed to be transferred, training provided, documentation prepared. Maria made sure everything was done properly. She didn't want to sabotage anything. That would prove the Vrix propaganda right, that humans were dangerous and untrustworthy. Instead, she left detailed instructions and offered training sessions to non-human engineers who would take over the facilities. Many of those engineers begged her to stay. "We don't know these systems well enough," a Corthan engineer told her at the Tyros shipyard. "It'll take us years to reach your level of expertise." "Then you'll have to learn quickly," Maria said, not unkindly. "I'm sorry, but we can't stay where we're not wanted." She systematically removed the specialized components that only humans could manufacture. The drive modifications that had improved efficiency by 30%? Gone. The energy management systems that reduced power consumption? Removed. The structural reinforcements that allowed ships to handle higher stress loads? Dismantled. What remained were perfectly functional ships. They just weren't as good as they had been with human improvements. Dr. Ben Carson and his medical teams faced their own challenges. Ben supervised the closure of 17 human-run medical facilities across council space. These facilities had served millions of patients from dozens of species. The most painful was shutting down the clinic on Telran Prime, where he had worked for a decade treating the genetic disorder. He met with Korvaz one final time before departure. "Dr. Carson, please reconsider," Korvaz begged. "We need you. My people need you." "Your people need justice," Ben said sadly. "The cure I developed was stolen and credited to Vrix researchers. I gave years of my life to help the Telrani, and the council spat on that work. I can't stay in a place that treats me like that." "But the patients," Korvaz said desperately. "What will happen to them?" "The treatment protocols are documented. Your own doctors can administer them," Ben said. "But understand this. I was working on next-generation improvements. Treatments for other conditions. Research that would have saved thousands more lives. That research is coming with me. The council will never see it." Ben packed up his laboratory with meticulous care. Every sample, every piece of data, every experimental protocol, all of it was loaded onto transport ships bound for Earth. The council would have to develop their own treatments from now on. Without human ingenuity to drive breakthroughs, progress would slow to a crawl. Across council space, similar scenes played out in every industry. Human teachers closed their schools. Human farmers shut down their agricultural operations. Human merchants liquidated their businesses. Human workers quit their jobs. Jake Palmer coordinated the civilian evacuation from his office on Council Prime. The sheer logistics were staggering. 47 colonies, hundreds of thousands of civilians, millions of tons of equipment and personal belongings. All of it had to be packed, shipped, and transported safely. The key was organization. Jake had been preparing lists for months, ever since the restrictions began, and he saw where things were heading. Every human had been contacted. Every household had been assigned a departure date and transport assignment. Every business had been inventoried. "Transport Group 7 is ready for departure," reported one of his assistants. "That's the new Beijing colony. 3,000 people. Clear them for launch," Jake said. Have Transport Group 8 move to the staging area. One by one, the colonies emptied. Humans packed their lives into cargo containers and boarded transport ships. They left behind empty buildings, idle equipment, and stunned alien neighbors who hadn't believed the humans would actually leave. At the mining operation where Sam Mitchell worked, the Corthan foreman watched in disbelief as the human crews packed up their gear. "You're really going?" the foreman asked Sam. "All of you?" "All of us," Sam confirmed. "The mine will still work. You just won't be as productive without us." "But we need you," the foreman protested. "You should have thought of that before the council decided we weren't worth protecting," Sam said bluntly. "We're not slaves. We're not tools to be used and then thrown away. We're people and we deserve basic respect. Since the council can't provide that, we're going where we are respected." The foreman watched helplessly as decades of human expertise walked out the door. The mine's productivity would drop by 40% within a month. Daniel Wright was among the last to leave Council Prime. As Earth's ambassador, he handled the formal diplomatic closure. He met with Chairman Kelver one final time to deliver Earth's official withdrawal from the Council. "Ambassador Wright," Kelver said. He looked older than he had 6 months ago, tired. "Is there nothing I can say to change your mind?" "You had 50 years to treat us fairly," Daniel said. "You had months to provide justice for the Wanderer massacre. You had countless opportunities to stop the discrimination and the theft of our work. You chose not to. So no, there's nothing you can say now." "The Council needs humanity," Kelver said quietly. "Then maybe you should have thought of that before you let the Vrix push us out," Daniel replied. He placed a formal document on Kelver's desk. "Earth's official withdrawal from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. We're closing our embassy. We're recalling all diplomatic personnel. We're severing all official ties." "This is a mistake," Kelver said. Daniel looked at him with cold eyes. "The mistake was thinking we could have a partnership with people who only wanted servants. We wanted to be your equals. You wanted us to know our place. Well, we've learned. Our place is somewhere far away from you." He turned and walked out of the office. Katie Morrison was waiting for him in the corridor. Together they walked through the embassy for the last time, making sure every file was deleted, every piece of equipment removed, every trace of human presence erased. The embassy building was returned to council administration empty, and 3 months after the last human ship departed, Chairman Kelver sat in his office reviewing disaster reports. They covered his desk in piles, each one detailing another crisis, another failure, another system breaking down without human support. The first crisis had been the border regions. With Lisa Chang's fleet gone, the outer colonies were defenseless. The Vrix fleet was supposed to take over patrol duties, but they were stretched too thin. They couldn't cover the same territory with their smaller numbers. Raiders struck within weeks. The Belton colony, the same one Lisa's fleet had saved years before, was attacked again. This time, no human ships appeared. The Vrix fleet arrived 4 days later. By then, the raiders had killed 300 colonists and stolen millions of credits worth of resources. It happened again on the Corlin outpost. Then the Tellerny mining station. Then a dozen more locations across the border sectors. Worlds that had been safe under human protection became targets overnight. The governors of those worlds sent desperate messages to council headquarters. "Where is our protection? Where are the ships that kept us safe?" The answer was always the same. "The Vrix fleet is responding as quickly as possible. Please be patient." But patience didn't stop raiders. It didn't protect families. It didn't save lives. Within 2 months, 5 border colonies had been abandoned entirely. The populations evacuated to safer regions, leaving behind infrastructure and investments worth billions of credits. The Council's frontier was collapsing. The second crisis was medical. The plague that Dr. Ben Carson had been studying didn't stop spreading just because he left. It continued to affect Tellerny populations across multiple worlds. Without Ben's expertise and his cutting-edge research, the death toll climbed steadily. The Tellerny government begged the Vrix Research Institute to share the gene therapy treatment. The VRIX researchers, who had stolen credit for Ben's work, discovered they didn't actually understand how it functioned. They could administer existing doses, but they couldn't produce more. They didn't know the synthesis process. They couldn't replicate Ben's results. Korvaz, Ben's former assistant, tried to recreate the treatment from memory and the limited notes left behind. He worked day and night, but he lacked Ben's genius. The plague spread faster than he could develop solutions. Dr. Carson would have solved this by now, Korvaz told his supervisor in frustration. He understood the genetic mechanisms in ways I never could. Without him, my people are dying. His supervisor had no answer. They had driven away the one person who could have saved them. The medical crisis wasn't limited to the Telrani. Human doctors had served across council space, treating conditions that native doctors couldn't handle. With them gone, mortality rates spiked across multiple species. Experimental treatments that human researchers were developing were abandoned mid-study. Cures that might have been discovered in the next few years would now take decades. If they were found at all, the third crisis was economic. Human merchants had been the backbone of interstellar trade. They transported goods efficiently, maintained reliable schedules, and operated with a level of customer service that other species rarely matched. Their departure left massive gaps in supply chains. Goods that used to arrive on time were now delayed by weeks. Shipments were lost or damaged due to poor handling. Prices increased as transportation became more expensive and less reliable. Colonies that had depended on regular supply runs faced shortages of essential items. On Council Prime itself, businesses struggled. Human workers had filled critical roles across industries. Restaurants, shops, and service companies closed because they couldn't find adequate replacements. The economic impact rippled through every sector. Jake Palmer's replacement, a Solari administrator, looked at the economic reports with growing horror. How did humans manage to keep all of this running? The logistics are impossible. His assistant, reviewing Jake's old files, shook his head. Humans were just better at it. They had systems, protocols, and a work ethic that maintained everything seamlessly. We're trying to do the same work with half the efficiency. Can we hire them back? The administrator asked desperately. They won't answer our communications, the assistant replied. Earth has sealed its borders. They're not interested in working with us anymore. The fourth crisis was technological. Maria Santos and her engineering teams had left, detailed instructions for maintaining their improvements to the council fleet. But instructions only worked if people could understand them. Within 3 months, ships started experiencing problems. Drive systems ran less efficiently. Energy management systems failed. Structural components wore out faster than expected. Repairs took longer because the engineers didn't fully grasp the integrated human technology. A Corthan engineer at the Tyro shipyard stared at a malfunctioning drive assembly. This worked perfectly when the humans were here. Now it breaks down every other week. His colleague consulted Maria's documentation. According to these notes, we need to recalibrate the plasma injectors using a specific algorithm. But I don't understand half of these calculations. Can we contact the humans for help? We tried. They're not responding. We're on our own. Ships that had been models of efficiency became maintenance nightmares. Fleet readiness dropped by 40%. Some vessels were grounded entirely, waiting for repairs that might take months or years. The situation was worst in the defense fleets. Without human engineers to maintain the advanced systems, military ships lost combat effectiveness. The very ships that were supposed to protect the border regions were breaking down faster than they could be fixed. Vexco, the VRIX officer who had replaced Lisa Chang, commanded one of these deteriorating fleets. He watched his tactical readiness reports with growing alarm. 3 of his capital ships were in dry dock. A dozen fighters were grounded. Response times had doubled. This is unacceptable, he told his staff. Why can't our engineers keep these ships operational? His chief engineer, a VRIX named Kexter, looked uncomfortable. Commander, the human modifications were more complex than we realized. Their documentation is technically complete. but understanding it requires knowledge that our engineers simply don't have. The humans spent years developing expertise with these systems. We're trying to learn it all in months. Then learn faster, Thexkel snapped, but learning couldn't be rushed. And while they learned, ships remained broken and colonies remained UNDEFENDED. The fifth crisis was political. The Council had always had tensions between member species, but human diplomats like Katie Morrison had been skilled at mediating disputes. They were neutral parties who could find compromises that satisfied everyone. Without them, old rivalries resurfaced. Arguments that had been resolved years ago were reopened. Trade disputes escalated. Border disagreements became heated. The carefully maintained peace started to crack. An argument between the Corthan and Solari. Representatives turned into a shouting match during a council session. Chairman Kelver tried to restore order but lacked Katie's diplomatic touch. The session ended with both ambassadors walking out. Katie would have prevented this, Kelver muttered to his aide. She would have found a solution both sides could accept. Katie resigned, Chairman, the aide reminded him. And she's not coming back. The most devastating impact was on the Vrix themselves. Thexkel, the ambassador who had pushed hardest for restrictions on humanity, watched his own homeworld descend into chaos. A rebellion had erupted in the outer provinces. The rebels were demanding independence and reforms. Normally, the Vrix would have deployed peacekeeping forces to restore order. But human soldiers had made up 30% of the peacekeeping corps. Without them, the Vrix military was spread too thin. They couldn't suppress the rebellion and maintain their other obligations simultaneously. The rebellion spread. Worlds that had been stable for centuries suddenly erupted in violence. The Vrix Empire, which had dominated council politics for millennia, was fracturing. Thexkel sent desperate messages to council headquarters. We need military support. Send peacekeeping forces immediately. The response was cold. All available forces are deployed to border security. We cannot spare additional units. But our empire is collapsing, Thexkel protested. You should have thought of that before you drove away the humans, came the reply. The message was from a Corthan administrator who had lost patience with Vrix arrogance. Thexkel sat alone in his office, watching reports of his civilization tearing itself apart. He remembered his speeches about humans being dangerous primitives who needed to learn their place. He remembered his satisfaction when restrictions were imposed. He remembered his pride when humans were demoted and dismissed. Now he understood. The humans hadn't needed the council. The council had needed the humans. And his pride had blinded him to that truth until it was too late. 6 months after the exodus, Chairman Kelver called an emergency council session. Every ambassador attended. The chamber was filled with representatives from 17 species, all facing the same brutal reality. We made a mistake, Kelver said simply. There was no point in pretending otherwise. We had the most valuable allies in the galaxy and we threw them away. We let prejudice and fear guide our decisions. Now we're paying the price. Can we bring them back? Asked the Solari ambassador. We've tried, Kelver said. Every day we say,